Hello again. For 23 years, he was a constant among the consonants. Richard Whiteley, host of Countdown. He never missed an episode, but of course his family and friends miss him 5 months after he died. So today there was a service in York Minster to mourn his death and celebrate his life.
So many fans, so many friends with so many memories of Richard Whiteley. At York Minster today, a celebration of the life of one of the nation's favourite TV presenters. His real-life partner heard his on-screen partner pay tribute.
We loved him because he wasn't smooth, was he? He wore truly bad jackets with deafeningly loud ties. And his jokes were so bad, they were jokes only Richard could tell. His Countdown and television family loved him, and he really loved us. And for that, we thank our God.
Hello, good evening. And
For 23 years, he presented Countdown with Carol Vorderman. For almost 3 decades, he also fronted Yorkshire's regional programme Calendar.
Ow, ow, ow!
A role not without its pain. He feared he'd always be remembered for this moment. In fact, of course, he's remembered for this. And today in church, a musical tribute from Rick Wakeman, a piece called Gone, but Not Forgotten.
Remembering Richard Whiteley. Let's get an update now on our main news.
Welcome back, I'm Carrie Fraze. Now, he was a friend to millions of television viewers, and today thousands turn to say their final farewell to Richard Whiteley. Friends and former colleagues of the late Countdown host attended a memorial service at York Minster today. The 61-year-old died in June following a heart operation at Leeds General Infirmary. Tonight we'll hear from those who gathered to remember Richard Whiteley, including the comedian Barry Cryer, the singer Leslie Garrett, and the television star Alan Wicker. But first, let's remember the man himself from his long broadcasting career.
Hello, good evening, and as the countdown to a brand new channel ends, a brand new countdown begins.
The Countdown years have just flown by, those 21 years, and what started as just a 4-week experiment, really, just a commission just for the 4 weeks, has grown into 21 years.
I did it
I just loved those years, those calendar years. I very rarely took days off because I couldn't bear being at home and watching someone else do calendar.
Hello from the cliff top in Scarborough. I'm speaking to you live. Well, I don't know if you probably saw that, and it says it all. It says it all.
Well, it's now just about a couple of hours after this blast has ripped out the front there of the Grant Hotel. You can see the floors there ripped apart, the top floor and right down to about the second floor, just sliced out.
The ferret incident happened in 1977, which is a long time ago, but never to be forgotten. It's made everyone laugh. It's made the whole world laugh, and I know that will be my epitaph. I think when the Grim Reaper arrives, it won't say, the obits won't say, perceptive TV interviewer dies, or popular parlour game afternoon TV host dies. Ferret man dies.
Happy birthday.
People will talk.
Richard Whiteley there as the viewers remembered him. Well, those attending today's service heard this heartfelt tribute from his former Countdown co-host Carol Vorderman.
The mayor in the chair, King Dick of Campdonia, master of the ferrets, Richard Whiteley, OBE DL. Today we are here to celebrate the life of a unique man who lived every moment to the full. A man who always said yes, particularly to a party invitation. He said yes when he was asked to host a tiny little show called Countdown over 20 years ago, and thank goodness he did. Through it, he achieved one of his proudest moments when he became the first face on Channel 4, as Sir Paul Fox said, on Tuesday, the 2nd of November, 1982. And over the many years since that first day, Richard was the man who millions of Countdowners came to love for the fact that he broke all presenting rules. We loved him because he wasn't smooth, was he? He wore truly bad jackets with deafeningly loud ties. And his jokes were so bad, they were jokes only Richard could tell. Instead of giving clues into the tea time teaser, and everyone here who's ever seen Countdown would know, he'd muck it up and give the answers instead. He'd forget contestants' names all the time, and he could never understand a word that Scottish people said, which caused no end of problems. As he himself admitted, he would often start a sentence without knowing quite how it was going to end. As the many years went by on Countdown, Richard became happier, and I'm sure that everyone who watched could tell. And that, and I know this because he told me, was due to Cathy. Cathy was Richard's soulmate, and with Cathy, he reached new and giddy heights of daftness, which shone through the screen. All of our Countdown studio audiences came to see him. They waited 2 years for their tickets. Students came on buses from all over Britain with their Richard Whiteley t-shirts that they'd had made and horrible ties that they borrowed from their dads, and he revelled in it. Since Richard's death in June, Countdowners have sent more than 250,000 messages and tributes. Countdowners are decent people, and their respect for Richard was matched only by his respect for them. More than 1,000 people here today, and I thank all of you. You didn't know him personally, but you came to know him through television. And it's a mark of the affection Richard created in people that you've come today to pay your respects. And believe me, if he were here, he'd be delighted to welcome you one by one. He would have stood at that door, shook every single hand as you came in, and he'd want a photograph taken with everyone. He was the best company you could possibly wish for. And when you were with him, every time you were with him, you laughed. There are endless stories about Richard, thousands and thousands of stories about Richard, but if I could just tell you, the last one really that happened with me was the last public event that Richard and I went to was in April this year before he fell ill. And we went to present an award at the British Book Awards in London. Well, we were put on a table with all the other award presenters, and we sat down, and the ceremony was going on, and we sat down, and there was this lovely lady sitting next to me. There was me and Richard. And Richard leant over and said, oh, I'm delighted to meet you, because he was enthusiastic about everything and everybody. Oh, delighted to meet you. I love your books. I absolutely love your books. I thought, oh, he's well read. She said, oh, thank you so much. He said, oh, yes, they're marvellous. All about the choristers and the cloisters and everything. He said, they're just marvellous. Anyway, this lady was then ushered away to present an award. And I turned to him and I said, gosh, you are well-read writers, aren't you? He said, oh, yes. He said, I love that Joanna Trollope. I said, no, Richard, that was the actress Patricia Hodge. And then, as only Whiteley could, he made it worse by sending her a bunch of flowers the next day saying, I'm sorry, I thought you were a Trollope. What could you do with him? Whiters would have loved today, he would have loved this service with camera crews and broadcasters from all channels in Britain, more than 2,000 people packed into York Minster, choristers and dignitaries and household names, and everybody here for one reason, to talk about him. He'd have loved it. He's here really with us. But because of Richard, Countdown remained one of the most important shows on Channel 4 for 23 years. And in all of that time, Countdown never won a single award. For years, we trudged along to the National Television Awards at the Albert Hall, and we knew we'd lost before the awards began because we were plonked in what we called Loser's Corner. We were always behind Brookside and in front of the bill. And we'd sit there and we'd practice our losers' faces for the cameras. Oh, how upset we were. And Richard would get hysterical laughing. He'd always say, Remember our motto borders, we never win. And he'd go, ha, ha, ha. And we never did win. We never won there. We never went anywhere else. But Countdown has never been a glory show. And Whiters, if I could speak to you now, all that award losing flashed by too quickly. And I just wish we could have lost together for many more years than we did. I'd like you all to just look at your service card. Could you just look at it and look at the picture of his lordship on the front? Now, Richard chose that photo earlier this year for his next Countdown picture handout. It was never used, but he loved that picture. So look at that daft face. And no matter how sad you may feel, remember how many times he made you laugh and how many times he made you happy. Richard loved every second he was on Countdown. He knew he was lucky. Most of us don't. His Countdown and television family loved him, and he really loved us. And for that, we thank our God.
Carol Vorderman there on Richard Whiteley. Well, as we've been hearing, he was much loved. Known for his loud ties and stripy jackets, he quickly became an afternoon television icon. He never missed presenting an episode of the cult TV programme until he fell ill in May. And his legacy of laughter wasn't forgotten today.
Fondest memory of Richard. I think probably when I did Countdown with Giles Brandreth and Richard, we did a sort of special edition, and Richard, I have to say, was being a bit grumpy that day, but in his usual kind of really entertaining way. Me and Giles just spent the day poking fun at him and wound him up a bit, and it was a bit like winding up your dad. It was lovely, and I've always been terribly fond of him, and I think he was a very clever man and just a joy to be with, and he'll be sadly missed.
It's an opportunity to really celebrate everything that was fantastic about him, and there was so much that was wonderful. I mean, the way he championed all things Yorkshire, me in particular, you know, I owe him a great debt of gratitude. When I was a young aspiring singer, you know, he had me on calendar, and we sort of kept our relationship going ever since. And he's going to be so badly missed, so sorely missed, but at the same time, you know, every time I think of him, I smile. You know, I think of that happy face, the wonderful ties, you know. He was just a great bloke.
A man who makes everyone smile, really. You mention his name and people laugh, really, which is nice, and laugh in a nice, happy way. He's a man, I think, who's certainly got no enemies, as far as I'm concerned. I thought he was a prince.
Oh, a lasting memorial to Richard, what would it be? A sort of endless record playing over and over again with one or two of his worst jokes, and I'm not going to be able to remember them, I warn you now. But whenever I heard them, I groaned, because I must have heard them for sort of the last 20 years of my life.
And the tie, chosen specifically for the occasion?
Yes, I was told to be colourful, and I thought I'd try, and I'd try not to match it too much with the shirt. For radio listeners, it's a sort of yellow and dark blue, and the shirt is another shade of blue, and the jacket's another shade of blue. A real tribute to old Whiteley, you know, because he could badly dress like nobody else, I have to say.
Our very own Nicholas Owen there, looking very dapper. Well, also among those at today's service in York Minster was another Yorkshireman and friend of Richard Whiteley's, Barry Cryer. The comedian remembered him as a man for all reasons, and he began his tribute characteristically with a joke.
Kathy, family, Carol, I'm Barry Cryer, I come from Leeds. I'm married to Terry, we have 4 children, and my hobbies are macrame and litter prevention. Richard was great fun away from Countdown. We always had a good time with him there, but when you were out with him at what was loosely described as lunch, more like a one-day match when bad light never stopped play, he was a joy to be with, as has been said before, and Georgina and Sir Paul have said about how he was always interested in other people. I was out on the loose with him more than once in Edinburgh during the Fringe, and the young ones would shout out, "Lord Whiteley," and he would shout, "Bazza, come over here." And he was always interested in other people, where they came from, who they were, not talking about himself.
a rare breed. I once did a poem on Countdown, and Richard asked me to do another one, and I never did, until today. Now is the winter of our discontent. 10 letters, 3 vowels. But it was meant in another context by the bard. In this setting, it is hard to come to terms with the inescapable fact we are missing the top of the bill act. Uncle Richard to me, he was never Dick, neither was he ever clever Dick, but our chum, our mate, our pal, avuncular, 9 letters. And I shall always remember our Mr. Bumble, our Beadle, not you, Jeremy, ever humble, almost arrogant in his humility, because he saw his role to be the servant of contestants, not their boss. No wonder that we feel the loss of that smile, those glasses, those jackets. Was the hanger still in there? I look back, it's so recently we spoke, and it's now clear that we rejoice because our host is here. And furthermore, I have a hunch somewhere he's having a marathon lunch. I'll be run out of town upon a barrel at this juncture if I do not mention Carol. They were as one, a four-legged joy, the dream team, Buttons and the principal boy. But now I close, and though 'tis alien to me to use words that are sesquipedalian, 14 letters, many-syllabled, I do, as a final toast to Richard, who was my friend, a man for all reasons, a practicing catalyst in all seasons. I'm celebrating Richard. I'm no mourner, so I now retire to my dictionary corner. My words run out. I am struck dumb. Did-it, did-it, did-it-dum. God bless Richard.
Memories of Richard Whiteley at a memorial service held today in York.